Subcommittee, thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to talk today. As I was introduced, I am the Vice Chairperson of the Michigan Public Board, and also the Vice President of Planning and Innovation at SMART. And I will be talking a little bit about the things that Jean talked about, holding harmless our partner rural agencies that we care so much about throughout my presentation. So just a little bit of context, MPTA represents 60 providers across Michigan. Where you see a bus, that's a transit agency that we represent, and we really work to be the voice of advocacy and support from those very rural, very small systems to the very large systems that provide tens of millions of rides a year and everything in between. So I'm always impressed and always learning from my transit colleagues about the different challenges that we face based on the sizes of our agencies and the populations we serve. So public transit really is a quality of life issue. I think of it more of that than of a transportation issue. I love buses and shelters and everything that goes along with the capital side of transportation. My kids actually tell me I have a weird obsession with bus shelters. But at the end of the day, it's not about the shelters, it's about the people inside of them. And it's about the people inside of the buses, and that's why we're doing this. So we've heard a lot of numbers today. I'm gonna talk about a few numbers, but I really wanna focus more on passengers and hopefully helping you to understand the impact at a very local level that operating dollars have on all of us. So again, Jean covered this, but I'll put it in a way that this is a very simplistic way that us at transit agencies think of our funding. The federal funding we think of as that pays for the buses, for the capital, and it does a pretty good job. They cover 80% of the cost of a bus or of a facility or a capital purchase. And I'd like to skip over state funding for a minute and go down to local funding. Local funding is things like millages, fare box revenue. Some communities use general fund dollars to support their local transit system. And I would say that communities in Michigan do a really good job at this too. I looked it up, and in the past 20 years, 98% of transportation millages have passed across Michigan. So we're talking about a bipartisan support of transit, a recognition in local communities that they have to bring money to the table. They're willing to bring money to the table, and they've continued to do that because they want transit in their community. Just in this presidential primary that just passed, 2 systems passed new millages for their community. So that's brand new local communities that are saying that they will pay their fair share. So skipping back up to state funding, Transit Capital, which Jean mentioned, provides that 20% match to the 80% for federal projects. So the buses, federal puts in 80, state puts in 20%, and they do a great job of that. I believe in the proposed budget, Transit Capital is fully funded this year to a level that will support the agencies in buying the buses. Local bus operating, which you've already heard of, LBO, it's commonly referred to. That's where we really need to have some work, and we need to talk about and figure out, because again, all these federal grant programs, all these other departments that are starting to pay for transit that were mentioned, they are paying for capital expenses. They are not offering operating dollars. That's left to the state and to the local municipalities to come up with that money. So I said I would be brief on the numbers, and I will. This is demonstrating just what Jean explained. This is reimbursement levels. So you see there the ceilings across the top of the slide, 60%, 50%. That's where we should be. In an ideal world, that's where a legislature before you came and said that this is where transit should be funded. We have never reached those ceilings. And so you see how the percentages that we do get of our expenses reimbursed have varied over the years. And you see where the proposed 2025 numbers are the lowest they've ever been. And last year, we made so much progress, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute. So to see this drop like that is so disheartening because we felt like we were really finally seeing some movement around Michigan embracing transit. So as I said, I'm going to focus on the people side of it. I'm not going to talk about numbers anymore until the very end. But I want to talk about what does it actually mean? What does LBO mean to transit agencies? And I've heard a lot of people, the common response when somebody says, well, what do operating dollars pay for? We'll say, oh, they pay to keep the lights on. That's the standard response, and that's true. But keeping the lights on obviously isn't compelling enough to keep LBO funded where it should be. So we need to focus a little more, dig a little deeper to explain to you what we do that's more than keeping the lights on. So I have a couple areas that we've focused on, and these are completely coincidental, not at all related to the areas you might serve. So we'll start with Roscommon County. I talked with their executive director, a great guy, and he was sharing that there is no hospital in Roscommon County, and yet seniors are 35% of the population. And he said that oftentimes the seniors have moved to Roscommon and their children, their grown children, have stayed in the southeastern or southwestern part of Michigan. And so the seniors are left to be independent, but also to deal with medical issues on their own. And so transportation for medical appointments is a huge issue, and transportation for seniors that are discharged from a hospital in another county, sometimes as far as Ann Arbor and Traverse City, they need to be able to get home. And so Roscommon County Transportation Authority has a program to do that. And quite incredibly, ridership has been doubling every year since this service went into effect in 2017 and 18. So, the need is there. If they don't have local bus operating, they can't meet that need. And that's a very real need of people not getting care because they don't have transportation to it, not being able to get home from a hospital that could be hours away from where they live. I think it's also impressive Roscommon County will pick people up from the hospital 24 hours a day. So they are ready to respond and be nimble in the way that they do. I don't have it on this slide, but I also, in reading the news, saw that there's an Amazon distribution center that's going to be built in Roscommon County. And I don't know if you've heard from them yet, but I promise you that if you haven't, you will. Transportation for their workers will be an issue. I have a lot of experience. All the transit agencies that are represented here have a lot of experience with Amazon and other distribution type businesses that need to bring workers to those jobs, and oftentimes transportation becomes a barrier, and then they look to transit agencies to assist them to get those workers to jobs so that they can run these companies and make money and put money back into your community. The next one is the RIDE in Ann Arbor. They are an amazing organization. They passed a significant millage a little while ago that has assisted them in being able to bring a lot of new programs online. One of those, just an example, is, again, the jobs issue. Workers from Ypsilanti cannot get to jobs in Ann Arbor, and so the ride is starting a new service, the Washtenaw Avenue Express bus, and it will very conveniently and efficiently be able to open the door for workers to be able to access more job opportunities. And I wanted to say these two last examples are both ones of connecting communities. This should not be considered innovative. Connecting communities and being able to help people to go from one county to another or one large community to another should be what we do. And the idea that these are new programs and that they're still considered innovative shows how much work that we have to do. But what I can tell you is that transit agencies know this, and they know how to fix this problem. It may be in a patchwork solution right now because of the years of underfunding, but we can figure this out. We don't need studies. We don't need councils to tell us to improve transportation. We need dollars to be able to run buses and add buses like this one and pay the driver who drives that bus and the fuel that goes into it. And then we can create you an amazing transportation system in Michigan. The Rapid in Grand Rapids, again, a large agency that provides an array of programs to meet the needs of their citizens. This was one example that I thought was compelling. They had a lot of great stories on their website, so if you haven't been on it, I encourage that you do. But this was a short video. I've screenshotted it about a passenger, a young passenger. This is a real story who has autism. And because of Grand Rapids bus system, because of the Rapid, he's able to work. They interviewed his employer, and he does it independently. They also talked to his sister, and she said how much it increases not only his quality of life and independence, but hers too, that she doesn't, that she knows that he can safely get to work, that he can work, and that she can go about the other things she needs to do in her life. And I saw that at the Rapid, 80% of the Rapid's riders through passenger surveys indicated they're using it to get to work. So when you think about an economic driver, this is quite literally an economic driver for people to get to jobs. And finally, of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention SMART, my own agency. We are in a growth phase right now, an exciting phase. As you all know, Oakland County passed an all-in millage, and we have been working tirelessly since that millage passed to begin to expand transit. We've had a lot of successes. We've started routes in areas that haven't had transportation in 20, 30, sometimes never in their community. And I've spent a huge amount of time going out in the public, like you all do, and talking to them to ask them what do they want to see, these communities that haven't had transit, what do they envision it looks like? And what strikes me the most is that no one ever says we don't want transit in our community, even if they didn't support the millage when it was being debated. They say, I wasn't a millage supporter, but it's here now, and so now I want to know when you're bringing transit to my community. Or if they already have it, they're saying, how can we get more? How can we get higher frequency? How can we better serve our seniors and the people with disabilities so that they have access all the time and in a safe, efficient way to get to doctor's appointments or the grocery store or other basic needs? So we are developing routes. We're going through a process. It's called Smarter Mobility. If you hear it, if you're one of the people that represent Metro Detroit, we hope you'll be a part of it. We're not only focused on Oakland, we're looking at Macomb and Wayne communities and making expansions there. And then I'll just mention one of the things we also hear that I've heard over and over again when I'm out in the community is the importance of those late night hours of operation. Metro Detroit is a second and third shift working community. And so buses that run from 8 to 6 are not going to cut it. They don't meet the need that people have to be able to get off work at midnight and safely get home, or to work the midnight shift and go in at 11 and get off at 7 in the morning and be able to get home. So increasing our hours on all of our routes, increasing our frequency, again, makes that powerful connection for people to be able to work and to live really productive lives and put back into the system that this supports. Here's just a few examples of things that are outside of the, the people examples that I've talked about, although they still connect to that, and they look at the way transits are being innovative to meet needs. Route expansion, I talked about it a lot in Metro Detroit. I'd be happy to go into much more detail for anyone who wants to know that outside of this. Medical transportation is such a major issue, and as Michigan continues to have an aging population that's growing, that issue is not going to go away. It's going to continue to get bigger. And I will say, as somebody who's a caregiver for my parents, it's not just an issue for the baby boomers, it's an issue for the Gen X population that is running all of their parents to doctor's appointments all the time. And so it's something that we have to address. There's a few transits that are working on projects where they partner with other organizations to look at putting housing near transit agencies, to provide childcare, community gardens, and these aren't things that transit is paying for, that MDOT is paying for. These are partnerships to be innovative in meeting riders and employees' needs, so we have this effective array of options for transit agencies. Smart bus shelters, and I don't mean smart as in smart, I mean smart with the technology that bus shelters are now coming with. Bike racks on buses are so critical. Clean energy, we continue to talk about the best ways to move forward with low emission buses. And looking at the resources we already have, park and rides and carpool lots that MDOT operates, using those as mobility hubs so that buses can pick up passengers who want to carpool into communities for work. We don't need to build a separate lot for that. We can let buses utilize the lot that's already there and put a shelter and some lighting there, and then encourage people to carpool, but do it on a bus. That's really the definition of mass transportation. So I'm almost to the end, but I do want to quickly mention the rural transit funding. We want to continue to expand in Metro Detroit. If you only Google Metro Detroit transportation, you're going to see a ton of articles that say how awful it is. We want to fix that. We know we can fix that, but we don't want to do it at the cost of the rural transit agencies. And if you look at this chart, it's just a quick visualization of what they are facing. In fiscal year 25, you have the federal funding, that's the blue, the state funding, that's the yellow, and then the green, that's the gap. And you see how big that gap is, that local rural communities are being expected to come up with 51% of the funding to keep their agencies going. They don't have it. It's just not there. And we are going to see deep cuts if that doesn't get corrected. And it can be corrected by the state increasing the amount that they're returning to those communities. Finally, our request, and I think you'll all know what it is. We hope that, and it's only one, we hope that, and we request that LBO be restored to the 2023-2024 level of $261 million. We can keep doing the work we're doing, and we can keep advancing and growing on it if we have that money and we're not worried about how we're going to keep the lights on. And then we hope that eventually we'll reach that full statutory ceiling of 50% and 60% that really would make transit in our state run the way that it can and should be. Thank you.
Great, thank you for your testimony, Harmony. I appreciated the background and just learning about the externalities of transit and obviously the demand that exists and the benefit it provides to communities. And I think just a summation of a lot of our conversations today is just the demand's there. We just need to find funding source to adequately fund these initiatives. We're going to kind of stick to the plan here and go on cruise control. So I'm going to ask my colleagues to please ask any questions of Harmony offline. Harmony, again, thanks for coming up and joining us. We're going to